In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how me and my client did $130,000 in just a 40-day time frame with a high ticket trading mentorship. So what you can see here is you can see our dashboard. From launch in a 40-day time frame, we did about $130,000 with a 72% show rate, a 68% close rate. These sales, these two sales metrics are absolutely cracked because my sales team is absolutely cracked. I have absolute killers. Big shout out to the sales team. We're absolutely fucking ripping with that. With a 42% lead response rate, and then we have about a 2K AOV on cash, which could be a little bit higher. I'm going to tweak some things on how we can get that higher. We're selling about a 5K offer right now, so this definitely could be higher. But it's about a 2K AOV on just a little bit over 70 cash. We have a spreadsheet, client name, contract number, and total contract value. So I'm going to break down exactly what I did to be able to hit these numbers so that you guys can replicate it with your coaching business and be able to do the exact same thing. The biggest lever that I pulled here was understanding market research. Like, market research really did build everything and was able to actually generate us this number here, right? Because I turned one deep insight into this number on the screen, right? And why every piece of the launch worked was because of market research, because I took my time and I didn't overlook it like 99% of other coaches or even growth operators do, right? Like, everybody wants to focus on what the fuck is the best funnel? Like, what's the best funnel to run right now? Or what are the best sales systems? Like, how can I get focus on your market research and this stuff. Well, it makes itself, right? Like, when you actually understand who you're selling to on a high level, that's how you win. That's how you hit this number of 130K. And, that's why a lot of coaches are stuck, is because they don't take the time to understand exactly who they're selling to. They're just throwing random pieces of content out there and hoping that it gets views, but views don't always convert to dollars, right? They're building a launch and a marketing process with no idea exactly who they're selling to, right? Because you can have, really good systems, but if your messaging is all off and the funnel just isn't congruent, it's not going to convert. And when I got obsessed with it, understanding the ICP, it was just super, super easy for me to create this launch and, continue scaling. Because when your audience better than they know themselves, the copy and the marketing, it creates itself, right? It makes everything easy. So the proof of it is how did the 130K a month actually happen? What did the market research specifically drive, right? Because I can tell you guys that it drove the whole launch, but okay, what did it actually drive? What did it actually help me with? So the market research was, massive in this portion here, right? And so, what that was is every email and SMS text hit a real pain, right? I used the exact same language in the copy. Okay, how does this ICP actually talk, right? And, for this, this client, 99%, I'm pretty sure almost everybody we've closed has been Hispanic. And so I immediately know, okay, we need to be able to talk a majority Hispanic, audience, and we can leverage that very, very well in, the SMS and email sequences. The content, right? The hooks are directed at that, Latino kid, right? Or that Latino person. Typically the ICP here is 18 to 25, so it's a little bit younger demographic. So I know in the hooks, we need to be able to speak to that person. What are they actually struggling with? What's their current state, right? Because when you can do that, that actually gets them to watch the video, right? Because let's just use the example that I'm a big basketball fan and I see a soccer video, and this soccer brand is trying to sell. Dude, I don't give a fuck about that. I'm gonna watch a football video. It's that's not the best analogy, but you get the point, right? The VSL, the story, the proof, the mechanism, the CTA, all was mapped out because they knew exactly what the ICP needed to hear, right? So for example, in the story portion of the VSL and in this launch process, we did a My Story video, and I said, hey, I know exactly where these people are at that we're trying to sell to. I know exactly their current state of where they're at in their trading journey. And hey, my client went through the same exact thing, but let's get more detailed and focus on literally exactly where they're at of your story, right? Because if you do a My Story video and you talk about, what you went through and it doesn't even relate remotely to what your audience is going through, do you think they're going to resonate with it? Probably not. So I said, hey, let's lean into this section, of your story a little bit more. Let's just make it based all around that, because I know that's exactly what they're struggling with, and they're really going to trust you, and the buying intent is going to go way up, right? And then, the landing page, right? So the headline that was tested was against their actual dream outcome, right? The risk reversal matched their biggest fear, right? If I understand exactly what they're scared of, and I understand maybe why they don't want to convert, we just make that the risk reversal. Don't just do some random risk reversal that you learned on YouTube, right? Actually structure the risk reversal on what your ICP actually needs and what in their eyes, what risk is to them. What is their risk? What could they potentially lose? What is the worst fucking thing that could possibly happen to them? Make that the risk reversal. Say, hey, this isn't gonna fucking happen. Okay. Emails, okay, we kind of talked about this up here, but like the warming season was written in their own words. I use their language, right? Triggering the exact beliefs that move them more towards, being a warm buyer, right? And then the sales script, like really, really important, exactly why we have that, again, that 68%, sales, closing rate, right? Because with the sales presentation that I made and even the pre-call process, I know their exact pain, their exact goal, and their exact objection. It's lay down closes. So one, not only does that closer get a case of that lead on it, specifically what they're struggling with, but my closer's been trained on this ICP so that he already has a predetermined understanding of how he's going to be able to attack each and every call, and he can track data, adjust, things like that. Even on that sales presentation, it's made to be able to pre-handle objections before he gets to the pitch. Every line of copy, right? It's like not a single word is from like imagination or I just fucking guessed. I didn't just guess. It was all driven from this market research, and that's exactly why we were able to, right out of the gate do really, really well. The funnel didn't make 130K. The research did, right? That's what it really comes down to. And so when you do this, it's so easy. I'm going to show you guys the exact process and exactly where you guys can look, where to actually rip this data from, because you need to know where to look and find the right data. So I'm going to show you guys right now exactly what I did. So there was, step one. Here's exactly where I went. Student onboarding forms are the first thing that I went. If you don't know what a student onboarding form is, essentially what it sounds like, right? So in this onboarding form, you're going to ask them a series of different questions on where they're actually at in their journey and kind of how their experience has been so far. Now, with this client that I had, this client here that I had scaled to the 130, he did not have a student onboarding form, and he actually currently, had a program open, but he wasn't making any money off of it. He hadn't closed someone in forever, right? Like he was like, yeah, I haven't closed somebody in like 5 months. I'm like, oh my gosh. So he wasn't making any money, hence why it's 0 to 130K. But I said, okay, I'm just going to make these student onboarding forms and just send them to the people that are, currently in your Discord, right? Like just send it to your current students, right? And every single client filled it out, and I was able to ask them about 10 to 12 questions on that form. Now, I only have 4 here just because this is just a YouTube video. I'm going to give you guys like the 4, main points that you should be asking, but you should have anywhere from like 10 to 12 questions. So, but I'm still going to put you guys on game here. So the, first question you should always ask is like, what's your first impression of my content? Like, how does my content make you feel? Right? Like, what's your impression of me? Is it good or is it bad? Like, what this is going to tell us is, hey, like, are we going to interpret this in a good way and should we double down on it? Or is this kind of like a bad thing for the offer and the scalability of the offer? And maybe we should probably try and change that and get people to perceive you in a different way. What made you, what made you decide to apply for the mentorship? So this is going to tell us the conversion mechanisms. Why did they apply? That's the conversion mechanism. What's driving these people to apply? Double down on that. Whatever the most common answer is here, you push more of that because that's what people are fucking with you for. That's why people want to learn from you. So that reveals the conversion mechanism. Okay, how long were they consuming content before they applied? This tells us the sales cycle. How nurtured are these people? What do we need to push in the front end to be able to shorten the sales cycle, right? You don't want some long sales cycle because they're just going to go buy from somebody else. If you're like, that's what a lot of people don't understand is like, they say, oh no, I need to nurture these people more before I convert them. Dude, they're going to go fucking buy from somebody else. There's so many mentorships to choose from. You have to shorten the sales cycle from, being here all the way, into here. Cut it in half, right? Push. This is what's going to tell you, hey, this is how I'm going to shorten the sales cycle, right? So, why did you choose me over somebody else? This is going to review unique mechanism. So important to understand unique mechanism in a saturated market. Like I said, there's so many people selling info now. You need to be able to stick out in a saturated market. And so the best creative director is people that have already converted. So this is what people are going to tell you what's unique about you, because it's not always easy to understand what's unique about you from your own perspective. You need other people to tell you what's unique about you because they're actually seeing you from a raw and authentic version of yourself. So that's going to review unique mechanism. You double down on you push some more of the unique mechanism, right? Because you need to stand out in a saturated market. Second thing that I went was competitor YouTube comments. The reason why I went to competitor YouTube comments for this client is because my client only had like 500 subscribers on YouTube, so there wasn't really much for me to work with. So I went to people in his exact same niche, but not only people in the same niche, people exactly like him. So he's Latino. I went to other Latinos traders' YouTube comments because I know that that's where the ICP is going to live, right? And so essentially what did I look at? I looked for pains, faulty beliefs, questions that were kept repeating in those comments, and that was the content calendar. That was the objection handling in the script. So I know that we can post, we can use that stuff for YouTube, right? We can already answer those questions in the content so that they don't wonder, they feel more comfortable to apply. But not only were we using this for the content, we use this for everything else as well. But YouTube is like a really, really good place to mine, data out of. And then this was like, I would say like right up there with like these two that I just went over, like Instagram pain polls, goal polls, and current state polls. So essentially, like, to kind of break down this concept, what you're going to do is you're going to post a poll. Like I can use, for example, like a goal poll. The goal poll, you say, hey, like, what is your guys' goals with trading right now? You could be like trying to pass my funded, just learning the basics, trying to get my first payout, trying to get consistent payouts. This is going to allow you to understand exactly what the dream outcome is. Or you could even tweak that in a little way of more towards the dream outcome. Like, what's the end goal with trading? Is it why are you doing what you're doing? Because you want to reach level of buy your time back, to be able to give back to your parents, right? Things like that. You're going to be able to understand or break out of the 9-to-5 curse. Like, you're going to be able to understand, okay, what do these people actually want? But more specifically for goals, like what I like to do with the goals is leave it open-ended, right? So we do a Q&A, and instead of like posting like a video response to it, we just respond to it in the DMs. And the reason why we want to do, actual like Q&A polls, we can get them to say verbatim what their literal goal is. So this will tie in a little bit later, but you want to get them, you can get really detailed with this because they're not just voting on a cold answer, right? Like a one-liner, right? They can actually tell you like a paragraph of what their goal is. And so you can really leverage that and get detailed with that, right? And you can leverage that really, really well. Essentially like the pain plus the goal in a simple way creates the offer. So once you've been able to rip this data here, and by the way, there is more that goes into this. There was more than 3 places that I looked, but because this is a YouTube video, I'm going to give you guys the 3. But step 2 here is essentially being able to interpret this data, right? Because you can rip all the data, but if you don't know how to interpret it properly, it doesn't even fucking mean anything. So like the biggest thing that I did, and what you should do as well, is I dump it into a doc and then I run it through Claude. And so I prompt it to I prompt it for this list here, right? So essentially demographics, language patterns, trigger prompts, and objections, right? So what this is going to be able to do is give you a way to interpret this data in the right way, because the last thing you want to do is like rip all this data, do all that work, and be able to perceive it wrong, and now you fuck up the entire marketing. So like biggest things that you're going to want to prompt it for is going to be the trigger moment, right? So like what it finally made them want to change, right? Like what was kind of like the aha moment of like, I need to change, like this needs to happen, right? And so you can actually push that in your content and force that on them because it's going to make them convert, right? And then like the villain, so what's their villain, right? So like, what if they already tried that didn't work? Whether that's like a certain way of trading or a certain way of executing the business model, or maybe it's directly literally a person, right? So like in the trading niche, for example, this is really a big part of the launch that we had implemented. Big shout out to Jason Malucci. I actually learned this from one of his YouTube videos because he did this in with his creators. Is the trading niche is very, very untrustworthy, and a lot of people get scammed in the trading niche. So we hit that head on, right? I said, okay, I know that a lot of these kids and these guys have probably been burned by mentors before, so let's address that in the copy, in the again, like SMS, emails, VSLs, like content marketing. Like, let's just address that and say, hey, that's not us. But not only saying that's not us, but giving them proof for why that's not us, right? And then the dream outcome is like not just make money, right? Like, oh, here's how you're gonna make money. No, the specific number, the specific lifestyle they want, the specific identity shift that they're chasing, who they close their eyes and they dream about being. Right, like who they can see them, where they see themselves in a year, what car they're driving, what how they're dressing, how they're thinking, how they're acting, the light, who they have in their life, right? Like getting specific with it, because that's what people value, not just making money, right? The doubt. Okay, what almost stopped them from not buying, right? Like that's your biggest risk reversal. Why do these people not want to buy, right? And so that's your risk reversal to actually get them to buy and say, hey, there is no risk on the table. Conversion mechanisms. Okay, why did they actually pull the trigger? Conversion mechanisms, super, super important, so that you can double down on that and get more conversions than you already have, right? And after that, biggest thing here, and one of the most beneficial things that you're not only going to be able to do for the launch, but even just moving forward after the launch, being able to scale, adding different things into, and optimizing things into the business is, a master ICP sheet. So this is the asset that makes everything else easy, right? It's one doc with everything about your ICP. One doc where you can just click on and you see everything that you need, right? And so what lives in this master sheet is going to be demographics. So age, background, where they're at in their journey, and knowing to be able to full picture of literally like subsegments of who this, ICP really is, like one-liners, right? Just, sentence breakdowns of like who these people are. Pain stack, right? So every single pain ranked by frequency, okay? Lead with the ones that show up the most at the top, right? So this needs to be narrow. You cannot have a pain list that's fucking list of 30 different pains, because that's not a real thing. I guarantee you 10 of those probably aren't even a real pain. You just made it up. So I like to have my pain stack typically around like 3 to 4 main pains, so you can really just nail that, right? Dream outcome, okay? In their exact words. Okay, I'm going to say that again. In their exact words. Well, how do we get that? The IG story Q&A, because we're getting them to say what their goals are verbatim, right? So in their exact words, those become headlines, hooks, most importantly, hooks. And then email subject outlines, just even in the email copy, SMS, telling your setters to text a certain way, closers to act a certain way, right? Beliefs. So what do they believe that's what do they believe that's keeping them stuck? Okay, that new belief needs to be installed before. What new belief needs to be installed before they buy? What do they currently believe, and what do we need to do to shift their belief into the right belief to be able to convert from us? Right? Conversion mechanisms. We've talked about that a bunch, and then like the biggest thing with the conversion mechanisms is like figuring out what is already working. Right? So like let's say this already works, and then you can create different iterations of it. So like, boom. We test this, test this, test this. Let's say these two don't work. We know what path to keep going on. More iterations. Boom, boom. Okay, these two don't work. Keep going, right? So like conversion mechanism is super important because you can do spin-offs of it. You don't want to push the same conversion mechanism because people are going to get sick of it, right? You do iterations of it and you just keep going down the right path. Objections, right? So what are their biggest objections? How can you pre-handle those objections in pre-call process, right? So like confirmation videos, FAQs, even like having your setter confirm those booking appointments, right? Like pre-handling all those objections, before they get to the calls, the absolute laydowns. And so everything that I've just shown you is exactly how you scale to these massive months. And that's exactly how I scaled this trader to 130K in basically a month. And when you take market research seriously, everything becomes super easy. It's supposed to have a Y, right? Super, super easy. If you want these different systems, if you want this market research, conducted on your business and your offer to be able to implement the right systems to be able to scale to numbers like this, you can click the first link in the description to apply to work with me one-on-one. Essentially, you'll be able to book a call and we'll essentially break down where you're currently at, and we'll build a plan to be able to get you to X revenue goal and whatever that goal you have in mind is. So we'll be able to implement these done for you systems and my done for you service, be able to scale to months like this. So guys, I appreciate you guys for watching to the end of this video. Again, if you are interested in working with me one-on-one, you can click the first link in the description. And guys, make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below what you want to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.